Good morning, children. Hearty welcome to all of you for today's session. Hope you all are doing good. Have you started your revision, children? If there is any doubt regarding the portion for the exam, you can inform me or call me at any time, or you can send messages through WhatsApp. If there is doubt, let us have a live interactive session. If you want, inform me as early as possible. Okay, children? Then, I wanted to remind one more thing, children. Very few students are regular in sending the notes. All of you are waiting for the last day. Today is the due date. Many of you, almost 46 students, didn't submit the notes. And so, Sibi, I think you didn't press the hand in. That's why your work is seen, assigned, and not handed in. Children, please be careful about sending notes. Okay, once again, I welcome you all for today's session. Today in this session, I'm going to begin a new lesson from our Bihar textbook, Lesson 7, Packing, written by Jerome K. Jerome. As usual, before moving ahead with our textbook, I'll give you a short paragraph on Jerome K. Jerome. Let's see who is the writer of the lesson, Packing. Okay, children, before that, I have a question for you. Do you like going for trips? What kind of trips do you enjoy the most? Trip with your family or friends? Yes, trip with your friends. Here also, Jerome is planning to go for a trip with his friends George and Harris. So let's have a look at the life and career of Jerome. Jerome was an English writer and humorist. He is best known for his comic travelogue, Three Men in a Boat. Apart from this, he wrote some essay collections, Idle Thoughts of an Idle Fellow, Second Thought of an Idle Fellow, Three Men in the Burmel, and some other novels too. Our lesson packing is an extract from the comic travelogue Three Men in a Boat. Are you ready to hear the story, children? Okay, let's begin. So before getting into the story, I'll give you a brief introduction to the lesson, Packing. As I told you, Packing is an extract from Jerome's novel Three Men in a Boat. This is a humorous extract about the confusion and mess created by people who are inexperienced in the art of packing. It exposes the utter clumsiness of the three friends, Jerome, George, and Harris. They consider themselves to be skilled in the art of packing, but in reality, all of them have little knowledge about working in an organized manner. Hence, to the great amusement of the reader, the small job of packing is carried out by them with many a jerk and jolt. The three men, Jerome, George, and Harris, have to go on a trip and have to pack for all. All three of them think that they are masters in the art of packing. But all they ended up creating is utter mess. They are disorganized, unplanned, foolish, careless, and unsystematic. So they cannot properly pack a thing. They blame each other for being poor at packing, and each boasts of his packing acumen. So now let's go straight to our textbook. Children, come to page number 82. Let's begin with the first paragraph. I said I would pack. I rather pride myself on my packing. Packing is one of those many things that I feel I know more about than any other person living. It surprises me myself sometimes how many such things there are. I impressed the fact upon George and Harris and told them that they had better leave the whole matter entirely to me. They fell into the suggestion with a readiness that had something uncanny about it. George spread himself over the easy chair and Harris cocked his legs on the table. So here the writer or the narrator Jerome K. Jerome said, I would pack. Jerome liked to pack luggage for trips and announced that he would do the packing. Jerome thought that his ability to pack luggage was better than others. He asked his friends George and Harris to leave the task of packing to him. The two friends accepted his offer instantly, which was strange for them. And George sat comfortably on an easy chair, and Harris bent his knees as he sat on the sofa and kept his feet on the table. That's the explanation of the first paragraph, children. So here the writer, he offered to pack. So what about the response of his friends? His friends accepted his offer. Then what did they do? George sat comfortably on an easy chair, and Harris bent his knees as he sat on the sofa and kept his feet on the table. This was hardly what I intended. What I had meant, of course, was that I should boss the job, and that Harris and George should potter about under my directions. I pushing them aside very now and then with, "Oh, you, here, let me do it." There you are, simple enough, really teaching them, as you might say. There, taking it in the way they did irritated me. There is nothing does irritate me more than seeing other people sitting about doing nothing when I am working. So actually what's happening here, children? Yes, by saying this, he would pack. Who says these words? The narrator, Jerome K. Jerome says, "I would pack." So by saying that he would pack, the narrator or the writer did not mean that his friends would sit and relax while he would do all the work. Actually, what they were doing, their children, George sat comfortably on an easy chair, and Harris bent his knees as he sat on the sofa and kept his feet on the table. So actually, what the narrator meant that he would boss upon them, he would supervise them while they would do all the chores. So actually, what happened, children? The narrator Jerome K. Jerome had to pack. He had to pack. So he would nag them, curse them, not knowing the work well, and then he would chip into the sort out of the mess that they would create. So his real intention, the writer's real intention, was to boost them, was to supervise them while they were doing the packing. So at last he was too irritated. Who was too irritated? The writer, Jerome K. Jerome, was irritated to see them sitting while he did all the work. See the last sentence, children. See, there is nothing does irritate me more than seeing other people sitting about doing nothing when I am working. So his real intention, it did not work. He wanted to supervise them. He wanted to teach them. But at last he had to do the packing. So he was irritated to see them sitting while he did all the work. Next paragraph. I lived with a man once who used to make me mad that way. He would loll on the sofa and watch me doing things by the hour together. He said it did him real good to look on at me messing about. No, I am not looking that. I can't sit still and see another man slaving and working. And I want to get up and superintend and walk round with my hands in my pockets and tell him what to do. It's my energetic nature. I can't help it. So in this paragraph, he recollects that once he lived with a man who would sit lazily on the sofa all day and would watch the writer do all the work. Did you get the sentence, children? I shall repeat it in this paragraph. The writer Jerome K. Jerome recollects that once he lived with a man who would sit lazily on the sofa all day and would watch the writer do all the work. Then the man would say that he enjoyed watching him go around doing all the work. This would make the writer mad with anger. And the writer added that he could not sit idle. He could not sit idle and watch others work like slaves. On the other hand, he liked to check their work, walk around with his hands in his pockets, direct them on how to do the work properly. So he feels that as he was energetic, it was a part of his nature to behave in that manner. So once again, children, I'll give you the explanation. Once the writer got a chance to live with a man who would sit lazily on the sofa all day and would watch the writer do all the work. Then what was the response of the man? The man would say that he enjoyed watching the narrator go around doing all the work. So this would make the writer mad with anger. Then one more thing he added there. He could not sit idle. He wanted to watch others. He wanted to watch others work like slaves. Did you understand? So he liked to check their work. He could not sit idle. He wanted to check others, or he wanted to watch others. He liked to check their work. walk around with his hands in his pocket and direct them on how to do the work properly, because he feels that as he was energetic, that is what is his character. He was boasting that he was energetic, as it was part of his nature to behave in that manner. However, I did not say anything but started the packing. It seemed a longer job than I had thought it was going to be, but I got the bag finished at last, and I sat on it and strapped it. Aren't you going to put the boots in? And I looked round and I found I had forgotten them. That's just like Harris. He couldn't have said a word until I had got the bag. I had got the bag shut and strapped. Of course, and George laughed, one of those irritating, senseless laughs of his. They do make me so wild. Okay, children, so what's in that paragraph? Let's listen. The writer did not say anything to his friends. What they were doing, their children? They were in a comfortable manner. George was sitting on an easy chair, and Harris, he bent his knees as he sat on the sofa and kept his feet on the table. So at last the writer and Jerome had to start the packing. So the writer did not say anything to his friends and started packing. As he closed it, Harry said that he had forgotten to pack the boots. Have you seen that question, children? See, aren't you going to put the boots in? Aren't you going to put the boots in? Yes. Who said these words, children? Yes, Harris asked. So, the writer did not say anything to his friends and he started packing. Then, as he closed the bag, as he was about to close the bag, Harris asked him, or Harris said that he had forgotten to pack the boots. The writer felt very bad. The writer felt very bad for Harris. The writer felt that Harris could have reminded him before he had closed the bag, but he thought that Harris was like that. And this was followed by an irritating laughter by George, which made Jerome wild with anger. That's the content of that paragraph, children. See, however, I did not say anything, but started the packing. It seemed a longer job than I had thought it was going to be, but I got the bag finished at last, and I sat on it and strapped it. So what did he do, children? The writer did not say anything to his friends, and he just started packing. Then, as he closed it, as he was about to close the bag, Harris said that he had forgotten, or Harris reminded him that he had forgotten to pack the boots. The writer felt that Harris could have reminded him before. Is he correct, children? Yes. The writer felt that Harris could have reminded him before he had closed the bag. But he thought that Harris was like that. Harris' nature was like that. And what happened then, children? It was followed by an irritating laughter. See the sentence. George laughed, one of those irritating, senseless laughs of his. They do make me so wild. So Harris reminded him that he had not packed the boots. Then that was followed by an irritating laughter by George, which made Jerome wild with anger. Jerome became very angry because Harris could have reminded him before he had closed the bag, but he didn't remind him. That is what is Harris' nature. So this was followed by an irritating laughter from the side of George, which made Jerome very angry, or which made Jerome wild with anger. I opened the bag and packed the boots in. And then, just as I have going to close it, a horrible idea occurred to me. Had I packed my toothbrush? I don't know how it is, but I never do know whether I have packed my toothbrush. My toothbrush is a thing that haunts me when I am traveling and makes my life a misery. I dream that I haven't packed it and wake up in a cold perspiration and get out of bed and hunt for it. And in the morning, I pack it before I have used it and have to unpack again to get it. And it is always the last thing I tend out of the bag. And then I repack and forget it and have to rush upstairs for it at the last moment and carry it to the railway station wrapped in my pocket handkerchief. So, Jerome, what he had to do, children? he had to open the bag once again. So Jerome opened the bag once again to keep the boots in. And as he was about to close it, after keeping the boots in, as he was about to close it, he was struck by a strange thought that he had kept the toothbrush or not. A horrible idea occurred to him. What was it, children? Yes, he had a strange thought that he had kept the toothbrush or not. He says that he never remember if he has packed the toothbrush or not. Jerome added that while traveling, he always messes up with carrying his toothbrush. See the sentence, children, my toothbrush is a thing that haunts me when I am traveling. So Jerome says that while traveling, he always messes up with carrying his toothbrush. He has nightmares of not having packed it, wakes up in sweat. Have you seen the word, children? Perspiration. Wake up in a cold perspiration. Perspiration means sweat. So he wakes up in sweat and looks for it. Then in the morning he packs it before using it. Then unpacks the bag to get the brush and use it in the morning. That means he had only one toothbrush. So what he would do with that, children? In the morning he packs it before using it, then unpacks the bag to get the brush and use it. Then as it is the last thing that comes out of the bag and he has repacked the bag, he forgets in packing it again. At the last moment, he rushes to his room or he rushes to his bathroom to get the brush, and finally, what did he do with it? And finally rubbed it in his pocket handkerchief and carries it to the railway station. So, did you get the incident related to his toothbrush? My toothbrush is a thing that haunts me when I am traveling and makes my life a misery. So, the toothbrush is a thing that haunts him when he was traveling, and it made his life a misery. I dream that I haven't packed it and wake up in a cold perspiration and get out of bed and hunt for it. He will get a dream, or he dreamt that he hadn't packed it. He dreamt that he hadn't packed it and woke up in a cold perspiration. Perspiration means sweat, and get out of his bed and he would hunt for it. And in the morning what he would do? And in the morning he would pack it before use it, and how to unpack it again to use it in the morning, and it is always the last thing that is what is out of the bag. Then he wanted to repack and he would forget it. At last, in the last moment, he had to rush upstairs for it, or he had to rush upstairs to the bathroom and carry it to the railway station by covering it in his pocket handkerchief. So that's the incident related to his toothbrush. Of course, I had to turn every mortal thing out now, and of course, I could not find it. I rummaged the things up into much the same slate that they must have been before the world was created. And when chaos reigned, of course, I found George's and Harry's 18 times over. But I couldn't find my own. I put the things back one by one and held everything up and shook it. Then I found it inside a boot. I repacked once more. So what he was doing there, children? So Jerome, he was looking for his toothbrush in his bag. Jerome was looking for his toothbrush in his bag. He had to remove everything. I had to turn every mortal thing out now. See the meaning, children? Every mortal thing, every ordinary thing. So he had to remove everything from the bag. Jerome was looking for his toothbrush in his bag. He had to remove everything, but he could not find his toothbrush. So he created a mess. So he found his friend's brushes many times. See the sentence, children? See. Of course, I found George and Harris 18 times over. What's the meaning of that one, children? He found his friend's brushes many times, but he could not find his own. So, he kept everything back into the bag one by one after shaking it each item. See, he could not find his own. Then what he do? He put the things back one by one, held everything up and shook it. So, in order to check the toothbrush, or in order to find out the toothbrush, what he was doing there, children, he kept everything back into the bag one by one, shaking each item, and finally found the brush inside a boot. Okay, so finally he found his toothbrush. Where it was, children? It was inside a boat. Then once again he repacked the bag. Next paragraph. When I had finished, George asked if the soap was in. I said I didn't care a hang whether the soap was in or whether it was in. And I slammed the bag shut and strapped it, and found that I had packed my spectacles in it and had to reopen it. I got shut up finally at 10:05 p.m. and then there remained the hampers to do. Harry said that we should be wanting to start in less than 12 hours time. Thought that he and George had better do the rest, and I agreed and sat down and they had a go. So see the explanation, children. And now when Jerome closed the bag. See, when I had finished, George asked if the soap was in. So now, when Jerome closed the bag, George asked a question if the soap was there inside it. As Jerome was impatient. Why? Why, children? Because he wanted to search his toothbrush. He wanted to unpack the bag. Or at last he wanted to repack it. So when Jerome closed the bag after finding his toothbrush, by then George asked him if the soap was there inside it. As Jerome was impatient, he replied that he wasn't concerned if it was there or not. Did you get the sentence, children? I said, I didn't care. Hang. I didn't care a hang whether the soap was in or whether it was not. So what's the meaning, children? As Jerome was impatient, as Jerome was totally tired, he replied that he wasn't concerned. He wasn't concerned or he wasn't noticed if it was there or not. Then what did he do? He closed the lid and strapped the bag. Then he realized that he had packed his spectacles in it. So by that time, so when he slammed the bag, when he closed the bag, he realized that he had packed his spectacles in it. And he had to open it once again to get them. Finally, the bag was closed at 10:05 p.m. Then they had to pack the food basket. See, the word is here, hampers. It got shut up finally at 10:05 p.m. And then there remained the hampers to do. See the meaning of hampers, children? Large baskets for carrying food. So then he realized that he had packed the spectacles in it and he had to reopen it again to get them. Finally, the bag was closed at 10:05 p.m. And then they had to pack the food baskets, or then they had to fill the hampers, large baskets for carrying food. Harry said that as they were left with less than 12 hours to leave. So what's the time then, children? 10:05. So only 12 hours remaining for their trip. So then they had to pack the food basket, the hampers. Harry said that as they were left with less than 12 hours to leave. As they were with, or they were left with less than 12 hours to leave. So they said they should pack the hampers. So Harris decided that the food baskets would be packed by Harris and George. So Harris decided that the food packets would be packed by them, or packed by him and George. Jerome agreed to take his turn for some rest while his friends packed the basket. So, when I had finished, children, once again, let me read the paragraph. When I had finished, George asked if the soap was in. I said, I didn't care a hang whether the soap was in or whether it was in. So, what's the meaning of children? Didn't care a hang? Show no concern or interest. So, he did not show any concern, or he did not show any interest to answer his question. Whose question? George's question. George asked if the soap was in. So I said I didn't care a hang whether the soap was in or whether it was in. Then what did he do, children? He avoided that question and she shut the bag with a sound and strapped it. And by that time he found that he had packed his spectacles too in it. Then he had to reopen it, and at last he got up finally by 10:05 p.m. Then their packing was remaining there. They wanted to pack the hampers. What's the meaning of hampers, children? Large baskets for carrying food. At last, Harris decided to pack the hampers. What's the reason, children? Harry said that we should be wanting to start in less than 12 hours time. So then they had to pack the basket because Harry said that they were left with less than 12 hours. Less than 12 hours to leave for the trip. So they should pack it, or they should pack the hampers. So Harris decided that the food baskets or the hampers would be packed by him and George. So George agreed to take his turn for some rest while his friends packed the baskets. Okay, next paragraph. They began in a light-hearted spirit, evidently intending to show me how to do it. I made no comment. I only waited. With the exception of George, Harris is the worst packer in this world. And I looked at the piles of plates and cups and kettles and bottles and jars and pies and stoves and cakes and tomatoes, etc., and felt that the thing would soon become exciting. It did. They started with breaking a cup. Okay, so let's see the explanation. George and Harris, they started packing the hampers in a happy mood. See the sentence, children. In a light-hearted spirit, they began their packing in a happy mood. Okay, so they wanted to show Jerome that they could pack well. What's the reason, children? It's clear, evidently intending to show me how to do it. So they wanted to show Jerome that they could pack well. Jerome waited for them to create a mess. Jerome, I made no comment, but only I waited. With the exception of George, Harris is the worst packer in this world. So, the things, it would soon become exciting. Who felt like the children? Jerome. He waited for them to create a mess because he considered Harris to be the worst packer in this world. Bad, worse, worst. Superlative. So, the worst packer in the world. So Jerome looked at the piles of plates, cups, kettles, bottles, jars, pies, cakes, and tomatoes, which had to be packed into the hampers. He thought that as they would mess up, it would be an interesting thing to watch. Yes, the scene became interesting. See the last sentence, children, and felt that the thing would soon become exciting. Yes, the scene became interesting as they broke a cup at the start. It did. They started with breaking a cup. So first of all, they started by breaking a cup. Okay, that was the first thing they did. Who did, children? George and Harris. That was the first thing they did. What did they do? They started with breaking a cup. They did that just to show you what they could do and to get you interested. Then Jerome says that they broke the cup to indicate that they could do that too and to make things interesting. So what's their opinion, children? In order to make things interesting, they started with breaking a cup. Okay, then the next paragraph. Then Harris packed the strawberry jam on top of a tomato and squashed it, and they had to pick out the tomato with a teaspoon. So Harris, what did he do, children? Harris placed the jar of strawberry jam on the top of the tomatoes. Then what will be the condition of the tomatoes, children? Yes, the tomatoes were squeezed by the jar, and then they had to remove the damaged tomato with the help of a teaspoon. Okay, so let's come to our last paragraph. Let me read the paragraph. And then it was George's turn. He trod on the butter. I didn't say anything, but I came over and sat on the edge of the table and watched them. It irritated them more than anything I could ever have said. I felt it made them nervous and excited, and they stepped on things, put things behind them, and they couldn't find them when they wanted them. And they packed the pies at the bottom, put heavy things on top, and smashed the pies in. So what did they do, children? George and Harris. Next, it was George's turn. What did Harris do, children? Harris placed the jar of strawberry jam on the top of these tomatoes. Then the tomatoes were squeezed by the jar, and then they had to remove the damaged tomatoes with the help of a teaspoon. And then it's the turn of George. What did he do? He trod on the butter. He stepped on the butter. Jerome remained silent. See, he trod on the butter. I didn't say anything. So Jerome, he remained silent but sat on the edge of the table to watch the action or to watch their packing. His silence irritated his friends. His silence irritated his friends. See the sentence. It irritated them more than anything I could have said. So it irritated them. his friends, his silence. Whose silence? Jerome's silence irritated his friends. They became nervous and stepped on the things. So they kept the things behind them, and later, when they wanted them, they couldn't find them. They placed the pies at the bottom and kept heavier things on them, which smashed the pies also. So, first of all, Harris, what did he do with the strawberry jar? Harris placed the jar of strawberry jam on top of the tomatoes, and the tomatoes were squeezed. And then it's George's turn. What did he do, children? First of all, he trod on the butter, or he stepped on the butter. Then they became nervous and stepped on the other things too. They kept the things behind them, and later, when they wanted them, they could not find them. Then they placed the pies at the bottom and kept heavier things on the top of it, which smashed the pies too. That means they made everything in a mess. Okay, what's the reason, children? Because they were not planned, because they were not systematic, because they were not clever enough to pack a thing at all. So here comes an end of today's session, children. Read the lesson carefully and do the work and rest it to you sincerely. Children, work hard to get good result. Do your daily work. Thank you, children. Have a nice day.